Peace. Welcome to another episode of Sex on Shuffle. I am your host, Cindy Lee, and this week is Trans Awareness Week. The 20th, which is tomorrow for me at the time of this recording, is Transgender Day of Resilience, Resistance, Remembrance. So I wanted to highlight some trans-led organizations, give a couple facts, and leave you with that for this week. Let's get into it. First, I'd like to encourage you to check out TDOR.co, where you can find the Trans Day of Resilience art project annually, which is a program by Forward Together, a women of color-led organization. There you can check out 7 years worth of art and amazingness by trans folks, by gender nonconforming folks, non-binary folks, and they're just really beautiful, and they all have different themes and center our most system impacted folks in beautiful, beautiful ways of just what it looks like to thrive and, get a glimpse of the beauty of trans liberation and a testament to how art is connected in all the ways to how we see the world and the political struggles that exist, particularly for, again, our most system impacted folks, trans folks, gender nonconforming folks, non-binary folks, gender expansive folks, especially those who have intersecting oppressed identities, such as, Black trans folks, Black disabled trans folks, sex workers, etc. Next, I just want to lift up a Black and Pink and my love, Dominique Morgan, who is the executive director, doing amazing work in prison abolition. The organization is dedicated to abolishing the prison industrial complex, the criminal punishment system, and liberating LGBTQIA2S+ folks, so expansive across genders and sexual orientations, and folks living with HIV and AIDS who are affected by the system. And they do fantastic work through advocacy, through support, through organizing. I encourage you to look into their pen pal program, some of their other amazing programs. And if spirit moves you, and hopefully spirit moves you in some directions, but definitely donate time, money, or otherwise. Next, I want to highlight the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, which is led by their executive director, Elle Hearns, named after Marsha P. Johnson, who was an activist, a performer, a beautiful being. And the organization is centering and defending the human rights of Black transgender people, also through organizing, advocating, creating intentional community to heal, and with a focus, again, on Black trans folks and Black trans liberation. And I also want to make a note that I will be putting links for all of these organizations and any other resources in the podcast notes. I encourage you to donate to the organization as well as their COVID relief fund specifically for Black trans folks. Next, I want to honor the Trans Women of Color Collective, which has been doing amazing work across their executive director, Dr. Lords Hunter, and their other leadership. Basically, they are created to uplift the lived experiences, the narratives of trans folks of color, while building towards collective liberation for all oppressed people. So yes, this is not an exhaustive list, but I wanted to give you, a listener, some organizations you could look into, support, lift up, donate, volunteer, whatever that's needed, whatever that moves you in recognition for Trans Awareness Week, for November being Trans Awareness Month, and as we honor those who have been ripped away from this iteration of life, and even folks who were not necessarily killed by the police state and by white terrorism. Folks who have passed, who have moved on to be an ancestor. I think it's safe to say that our systems played a part, particularly when I think about the vast statistics that exist around the treatment or the neglect of trans folks, gender expansive folks, particularly Black trans folks in healthcare profession, and them being able to have access to care as we're going through this pandemic, this quote unquote third wave. When I've been in the fucking house this whole time, I think about who was denied care. All right, I'm gonna conclude with a couple of facts that might be helpful for you if you are a listener that wants to be an accomplice and in solidarity with trans folks of all experiences, but particularly those who are system impacted. And if you are not, and you are listening, this may not be the right show for you. So one thing I'd like to say is, for the record, we are in the school of thought, if you're a listener, that the binary is trash and played out, right? Gender is beyond the binary. The binary doesn't exist. The binary is a tool of white supremacy and colonization. If you want to be real, it's all connected, right? The shit is baked right in. I get it if that is a thing for you, because I was raised with this binary thinking, this either or, when folks exist of many genders and expressions, and get with it or get gone, because liberation is going to happen with or without you. There is no one way to be trans, so I can't sit here and speak on that. Transness is not a monolith. There are trans folks of various sexual orientations, various relationship dynamics, into different shit, want to do things with their body that's none of our fucking business, want to adorn their bodies in ways that feel good for them. I still hear some folks needing qualifiers for them to validate or justify someone's gender. Like there needs to be some type of transition. There needs to be, gender markers on their identification that needs to align with what they think someone's gender should be. All of that is bullshit, right? That's why when I had the episode around pronouns, I stressed and emphasized that pronouns should be asked for all folks and not folks who you think don't align with whatever you think gender should be expressed, the way it should look to you. Listen to trans people, pay trans people, hire trans people, support trans people, love trans people. Make sure that places are affirming of folks, of trans folks of all experiences, not just white trans folks, not just trans folks that fit in whatever Eurocentric or heterocentric dynamics that make it comfortable for you. They're valid too, but that again is not the only way that trans people show up. Especially in movement spaces and organizing spaces, there are still so many folks that are hella transphobic and violent. There's so much trans misogyny. When if you look at all the movements in history, all the acts towards liberation, towards healing, there's trans folks. If they're not leading it, they are lifting it, despite that emotional labor being disregarded by people that are supposed to be their comrades. What else could I tell you off the top? I talked about pronouns for a second. I will say that sometimes folks use they and them pronouns to kind of get everybody, but understand that there is a risk and there's nuance in that. And using they and them for folks is essentially misgendering folks who do not use they and them as well. So yeah, please take a moment to educate yourself, whether you are cis, whether you're queer, because there's transphobia in the queer community as well. Take this opportunity as an invitation to do the work, to show up, make donations when necessary, move the fuck out of the way when necessary. Yeah, honor from what I counted, 56 trans people who have been killed in 2020 alone, reported, because I'm very sure that there's a possibility that there's way more than the numbers that I've gathered in my research. And love trans folks now. You give them their flowers now. Love on them. Love on us. Trans folks, non-binary folks deserve love, joy, pleasure, and liberation across all fronts. Deserves access to care, housing, justice, the ability to care for their children, families, or not in the ways that they need to and want to, which is why it's connected to sexual and reproductive justice. Thank you to all the trans and gender expansive folks in my life. And yes, the take-home message is trans folks are divine. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you already know, hit me up, sexonshuffle @gmail. And yeah, go be great. Shimmies.